my students either did great or they absolutely bombed and got like a D or an F. There wasn't a whole lot of gray area, and it just made me think about something that I have been talking to them about a lot lately. Good morning. Welcome back to the Caffeinated Classroom. If this is your first time here, my name is Marie and I'm a high school English teacher in Southern California. And welcome to my morning commute. So last night and this morning I had a very, I was looking at the calendar, just kind of like figuring things out for the next few weeks or so. And I all of a sudden realized I have like 2.5 weeks until finals. And then I started having a bunch of like teacher self-doubt. Like, am I preparing my students to know all of the things that they're supposed to know and be able to do all of the skills that they're supposed to be able to do by the time they finish the first half of my course? Because we're on a quarter system, right? So the end of the quarter is at the end of this month, which is like 2.5 weeks away. And I don't know, I'm having a little bit of like, oh no, we might have a whole lot of work to do. And then I've like sat myself down. Basically my job today is going to be to iron out like what was my final last time for this exact like point in time for first quarter, right, of my course. The fact that I can't like sit down and say this is what my students know means that something has gotten a little hairy in the way that I've planned things and just the way that I've organized them. So I just need to kind of do a little bit of like planning triage. So I'm going to take a pulse on my students today in a few different ways, do some informal assessments, and I will tell you all about that later on this afternoon. Have a good one. So, yesterday morning, which you just saw, I was talking about finals and how I want to craft my finals and how I'm preparing my students for a final assessment of skills that they have learned and hopefully mastered through my course. And so obviously, I mean, it sounds so obvious, and I know the things that I'm saying you're gonna be like, well, yeah, duh, but it's the how of making things like reading quizzes, smaller assessments along the way, small bits of training for like the big test at the end or whatever it is. And I don't necessarily create a final exam that's like cumulative. Like, it's not quite the same in my classroom as it would be in like a math classroom where you're showing like a cumulative exam of the whole entire course and all these different things. I mean, it is a cumulative exam of the skills that we've been gaining in this course, but I'm not like gonna be testing students on like knowledge and recall of something that we've read. That's not what I'm interested in, and that's not what their standards are. They don't need to be able to name all of these like ranch hands and of mice and men. They don't need that knowledge. What they do need to be able to do is to read a passage, identify the use of simile and metaphor within that passage, and then analyze the use of simile and metaphor. And then at the same time, these tests that I'm giving them, the small quizzes and a final exam, is also smaller little bits of training for large high stakes testing, whether it's standardized like state test, whether it's an SAT, whether it's like whatever sorts of things to try and prepare them for the next steps in the future. So all of that said, and I've said this before, I didn't used to give reading quizzes all that often, or I would do like little understanding check-ins, and I'm really shifting the way that I do things to make sure that I'm incorporating like identify the literary device used in this passage. And then the next question, the use of that literary device creates what sort of a tone, and then give some different options so that students are using more analytical skills, but using those analytical skills in the format of a test that it would be like multiple choice answers, like it would be in a high stakes test. So that creates a whole lot of work, a whole lot of prep work for teachers. But like, I feel like once they're actually created, it gives us a whole lot more direction as to where we are going with each and every assignment, with each and every activity we do in class, with like, it gives me purpose the same way that I give my students like a purpose for reading. It gives me a purpose for teaching. I'm not explaining myself very well. But anyways, I think you get the point. So what I am doing right now, because I have, oh my gosh, how many reading quizzes? I'm looking up at my homework board. I have 3 more reading quizzes for my freshmen, having to do with Of Mice and Men. 2 are next week and 1 is the following week. And then with my sophomores, I have 3 more reading quizzes, I think with the same, what do I have? I think I have 2 more next week with my sophomores as well, and then 1 the following week to finish up their lit circle, like book clubs with Lord of the Flies. And so those are the ones that I'm really redoing, is those little quizzes having to do with the Hunger Games, The Giver, and One of Us is Lying. So that the first quiz was a lot of recall, and then I had them like identify a point of view. The second quiz was more recall with a little bit of analysis. The third quiz brought in some like what is the best definition for the underlined word in the following passage given its context, right? So they have to like start using those sorts of analytical and like critical thinking skills. So I'm gonna do more of that kind of stuff and just build the intensity and the rigor of these quizzes as we go. I think giving students a really, really, really hard reading quiz as the very first part of like a novel study is going to overwhelm them. And so I'm trying to weave in nicely those little skills and just like build the intensity, like I'm saying, and build the rigor as we go, so they get to the point where their final, like their last reading quiz for my sophomores, their 6th one for these Lit Circle books, is going to be very much like their final. Like it will be the exact same level as their final, and all of the questions will be deep critical thinking questions and not so much plot recall, but saying, okay, I expect that you have read this now. I expect that now you understand it because you've read the rest of the book leading up to this. So I don't need to be checking for your understanding anymore. Now I need to be getting deeper with these questions because we've been having these conversations about annotations and about analysis, about characterization and symbol and setting, all these different like things. Now show me you can do this on your own, right? So it's like slowly raising up the training wheels of the bike and then starting to take them off. Basically, it's me working smart, not hard. Like if I use reading quizzes really strategically and mindfully, then my students are practicing all of these skills and I don't have to give them as many activities. We can have deeper conversations about their literature because they are being asked these really high-level questions through like a nitty-bitty quiz. So if you look around this room right now, there is quite a bit going on. I have some cleanup to do because it kind of feels like the walls are closing in on me, and it's not even like, it's not crazy. It's just stuff that kind of just needs to be like straightened up and tidied up a little bit. So I'm going to take care of that. I might be making these quizzes over the weekend because my brain is starting to turn to mush. So rather than sitting here and staring, I am going to try and be a little bit productive and like clean up some and straighten up, just so that when we do come back into class, it's not me like digging and diving for things. So as I am making my way around the room and just kind of like cleaning up and just, I mean, as you saw, I'm just like straightening up so that it feels less like the room is going to eat me alive. And then when all of my students are in here, when they're human bodies, it's like way worse. I realized I have a bunch of anchor charts and just kind of like charts that we're using as we read that I wanted to show you what we are doing and how we are using these things with, especially with this Lord of the Flies unit. But both of my classes are working on like big novel studies. So I just want to show you kind of like some of the strategies I am helping them with and what we are using as visuals in the room. So we'll start over here. This is 2 of them that I've stuck together on Lord of the Flies. And if you've seen some of my vlogs from last week, you've seen this before. This is just a good visual of the 2 themes that we are tracking in Lord of the Flies and in our book club, like our Lit Circle books. Coming of age, loss of innocence, human nature, violence, or peace. Over here we have a chapter tracker. Whenever we look at a new chapter in Lord of the Flies, we jot down some notes about what's happening in the plot. We need to fill in chapters 2 and 3. I'm kind of over it right now, so we're just kind of like picking up where we've left off here. I created this yesterday, just some read smart strategies to help my students, struggling readers and strong readers alike, with just some things that they can do. I'm not going to make them do them, but ways that they can advocate for themselves and help themselves read more efficiently. But one is to like read a chapter summary first and then read whatever it is so that you know what you're looking for. You're an informed reader. To read with a friend and discuss as you go, checking for understanding. To find like a chapter summary on YouTube or something like that. Same way as like reading a chapter summary. Using guiding questions, which I post for them on Google Classroom to test their own knowledge and see if they can answer these questions. And then also to read along to an audiobook. And you can find some great audiobooks on YouTube, and that's pretty cool. Over here I have big charts for my freshmen and for my sophomores, like a running tally of the different items that should be in their composition book. And then if I move along over here, you can see how our little theme tracer has been filling in nicely. We're a little thin over there because we didn't really finish our 3rd book club meeting today. We got just talking too much. We're gonna finish that on Monday. And then up here I've got like characters and symbols that we're tracking in Lord of the Flies. We're gonna talk about setting a little bit more when it gets further into the book, because I want to like talk about the evolution of the setting versus just saying, oh, it's green and lush and there's beasties and snakes or whatever. You guys can see my chairs are up because my classroom gets vacuumed on Friday, so we always put the chairs up to make sure that it's easy to clean in here. As I walk around, I think next week I might do a little like update on how flexible seating has been going, because now that my students are, this new batch of students I have this term, are more comfortable in here, it always kind of changes the game a little bit when it comes to like my cell phone policy and flexible seating. So I'm gonna give you guys a little update on things that I am going to change for next year, things that have evolved even just this year, and how that is all going. So that will be coming next week. And now I'm going to get to work doing some grading. Happy Friday. So as I have graded, I just put in grades for my freshmen for their 2 reading quizzes. And I am seeing a stark contrast between when they read, when they don't read, what they understand, what they don't. I mean, obviously, like I'm seeing all of the things that an assessment is supposed to show me. And I am seeing students who are, as freshmen, starting to cope with or figure out that they need to know how to cope with the pressures of high school, that they are going to have social pressures, athletic, like, you know, outside of school pressures, they're gonna have academic pressures, they're gonna have family pressures, and all of these things are new because they're getting older and they have more that they have to be responsible for. There's more on their shoulders, including reading on their own for understanding and for deep understanding, and to be able to take a quiz on every chapter. And it just made me think about like some of my students who I know read just bombed. Like they basically, their chapter 2 quiz for Of Mice and Men was a long like paragraph that was a summary of the chapter with fill in the blanks. I wish I could take credit for this amazing idea. It was, my team made this like last year. And each like number item, or each blank had a number next to it, and that was like, you had to fill in the blanks of the chapter summary, and some of it had details, some were names, and different sorts of things. And my students either did great or they absolutely bombed and got like a D or an F. There wasn't a whole lot of gray area, and it just made me think about something that I have been talking to them about a lot lately. I personally have a lot on my mind. I have a lot on my mind often because I'm an adult anyways, and we just have a lot on our minds, but I just am having a lot going on. I'm having a busy season of life. There's a lot happening. I have a lot on my mind. I'm a 12th year first year teacher, so I'm creating a whole lot of things and I'm trying to catch up to myself quite a bit. And early in my career, I was a person who I would make the surface look like everything was fine to my students, and I would be absolutely like hustling in the background and struggling and just like faking that everything was fine and showing my students a brave face. And I've gotten to a point where part of my job as being a teacher is not just the academics. As we all know, it is also their like mental and emotional health. And so if I can show my students a good example of me having a hard time and just telling them, I'm not gonna tell them what I'm having a hard time with. I'm not gonna tell them the things that are going on in my life that are weighing on my mind and on my heart, because that is not something that they need to know about. That's not something that they need the responsibility of that knowledge. But if I can just show them like, hey, listen, I have a lot going on in my life too. I've screwed up. Like, here's how I screwed up. I didn't make your quiz for today yet. So I'm gonna give you guys, as long as it takes me to finish making your quiz, and then we'll take the quiz and that's gonna be what it is, because even though I wasn't completely prepared and I screwed up a little bit today, I'm going to keep going. I'm not gonna give up. I'm not gonna just pretend that everything's okay. And I'm like talking them through, and this is legitimately what happened this morning with my sophomores. I'm talking them through the mistakes that I'm making or the struggles that I'm having without being super specific, because once again, that's not really appropriate for a student and teacher relationship, but just to model for them how an adult can like have a hard time with something and still, these are the coping mechanisms that I am employing to get through this, because I have a job to do and I'm responsible for your education, and here's how I'm going to fulfill that job. It's something that I find myself doing more and more, and being really transparent in that way. You can struggle with things and still learn how to cope. Like, rather than make excuses for things that are going on in our lives and reasons why we can't do things, showing them how to deal now while they're starting to get more responsibilities. And I think they appreciate it, and it definitely builds our relationship a lot quicker and it becomes a lot stronger. Like they can see that I'm a real person, and that's really, really good for them to see a real person that they either look up to or are forced to listen to because they're in my classroom. Just explaining like adults have a hard time too, and we don't all have to freak out about it. Like, this is how I'm dealing right now. With that thought in mind, I'm actually going to take care of some things that I need to take care of so that they are not stressing me out over the weekend. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for watching. I know this was a lot of talky, but you know, if you've been watching my channel for a minute, you know that I'm into talking. I like it a lot. If you've not already subscribed, take a moment to do so. If you like these videos, make sure that you give them a thumbs up so that they keep showing up in your feed. Click the little bell so you get alerts, and I will see you guys